Are you seeking fulfillment for your life? Do you want freedom from fear? That's why we're here. Welcome to Jesus 101, introducing you to the real Jesus. And now, here's your host, Elizabeth Talbot.
Welcome to Jesus 101. Thank you so much for joining us for our ongoing series on the book of Acts that we have entitled Proclaiming Jesus. Today we are actually going over a story on prayer. I love the story that we're going to analyze today. But before we do, I want to tell you a story about prayer. When I was doing my first master's in organizational behavior, this was an institute here in California that was not a religious institution. Most of the people that were doing this Masters of Organizational Behavior with me were people that were officers in a corporation or something like that. That most of them had an MBA and they now wanted to get a Masters in Organizational Behavior. And in the middle of one of these classes, we had a spiritual moment. And it was the daughter of, actually, I think he was a Christian pastor of some kind, I don't remember, but she was in business and that's why she was there. One day, they said, share something that has happened to you that was interesting. And being that this was not a religious institution, when she opened her mouth, I was like, what? I had no idea. Well, what happened is she was in a terrible accident, terrible accident. And she, when she looked at herself in the mirror and saw all her face, covered with blood and everything, she was praying, oh, God, sustain me until the ambulance comes. And she says, and you know what? She says, I saw my guardian angel. And I was like, what do you mean? And so the whole class was looking at her and listening to her story. She says, this man came next to me and held my hand and said, don't worry about it. The help is on the way. Be calm, be peaceful. And she says, and there was this glow about him and he talked with such peace. And immediately she says, I felt peaceful even though I was looking at myself in the mirror of the car, seeing that and she had to have several reconstructing surgeries on her face. And she was beautiful. So I had no idea that this had happened to her. And she said, when the ambulance arrived and I wanted to thank this man, and he had a name, I don't remember the name, they said, there was no man with you at any point. And she kept saying, yes, there was. I mean, he was holding my hand and I had asked God to help me and here he was. And she said, so now, being that nobody else saw him and that nobody else had any record of him, she says, I know that I saw my guardian angel in answer to my prayer. And I said, wow, what an amazing and surprising answer to prayer. And today we're going to have such a surprising answer to prayer that nobody's going to believe that it's actually happening. And it's one of those things that is kind of humorous and powerful all at the same time. So please come with us to study the Bible. And we want to welcome Pastor and Dr. Dwight Nelson.
It's good to be back with you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming. And isn't this a fun story today?
It is. But the story you just told, you hear those every now and then, don't you? People talk about a stranger that just steps into their life for a critical moment and then is gone.
Yes. But it was so striking because this was not a religious institution, because usually you hear them in a secular school, and she says, I saw my guardian angel, and all of a sudden, all of us, And I don't know how many people were Christians in that. Everybody listened to her story. It was a striking story. Yeah. So we are going to go to chapter 11 of Acts. Unfortunately, this starts with some problems, and we have martyrs that will start now, and from the disciples, because so far the only martyr is Stephen, and he was not part of the disciples. Right. But let's talk a little bit about right before that, in chapter 11, verses 19 to 30. Now we have the city of Antioch, which I want to show in the map. And I actually brought the Bible where the map is found so that you know where I took it from. This is the Andrews Study Bible, being the pastor, Dwight Nelson pastors at Andrews University. And they have this awesome maps in the back. So if you ever...
They do. It's great maps.
They're great maps and they're very nice. And so I actually enlarged one of them. So see, I think it's important to understand, and we're going to use it again when Paul starts moving around, that we are starting to get this Gentile center. Antioch is up here, so this is where Jerusalem is, and here is Antioch, and all the missionary journeys from Paul will start from Antioch, because Antioch has this burden for the Gentiles, and so Paul and Barnabas are starting to do all kinds of things, but in Jerusalem, for the first time now, we have the disciples starting to be persecuted.
Yeah.
Because it looks like, before that, it looked like the Hellenist Jews were the main, concern of the persecution. But now the actual disciples are starting to get persecuted here. And so Paul is all around here, and this is actually the third journey.
And Antioch becomes the great sending church.
This is the
sending
church.
Sending out.
Yeah.
Jerusalem does not sending, but Antioch is sending.
Your church does a lot of sending.
Pioneer?
Yeah.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah,
because
you send missionaries, right? A lot, and yeah. So here we have Antioch and all the things that are starting to happen. And for the first time in Antioch, the Christians will be called Christians. This is a key verse that we have in Acts chapter 11, verse 26. Is the first time we have the name for Christians in the New Testament. And we only have it 3 times in all of the New Testament, and 2 of them happen in the book of Acts. And this is the first one. And so you want to read it? Verse 26, you
verse
have
26.
it? 11:26. Go ahead.
So Barnabas in verse 25 goes up to Tarsus. He's looking for Saul, wants to bring him back. And when he finds him, he brings him to Antioch. So for a whole year now, Barnabas and Saul met with the church and taught great numbers of people. The disciples were called Christians first in Antioch.
Here we are. And Christians, it was like allegiance to, right? Like there was a sect called the Herodians. Those were the followers of Herod. And so Christians are the followers of Christ. And they didn't call themselves Christians. Other people called them Christians. And that's how the whole Christian name, because I don't think a lot of people know that Christ is a name, is Messiah, right? Christos in Greek.
Christos means the anointed one.
Yeah, the anointed one. So simply what they were saying is these people are following the anointed one. Yeah. So I thought it was interesting to know this. Now we start on chapter 12 with the disciples starting to get arrested. And so we have James as the first one. So.
Yep. In fact, let me read this, just a line or two. That'd be all right, Elizabeth? This is David Bentley Hart's New Testament. It's just called The New Testament, but it's critically acclaimed. He is a Greek scholar, and so he's looking at the original. And you'll see a little different flavor here. Now at that time, so this is chapter 12, verse 1. Now at that time, Herod the king applied his hands to oppressing certain members of the assembly. He doesn't use the word church, he uses the word assembly. He disposed of James, the brother of John, with a short sword. So it's a short sword. So
yes,
gone.
Yeah, but I think it's interesting that it actually mentions how he died. Because Stephen had been stoned, and now Herod, this is Herod Agrippa the first, right? So he wants to be okay with the Jews.
He does. He's trying to curry their favor.
Right. So when he sees that this pleased them, then he goes for Peter, right? But can you imagine having that type of king over you that is trying to please one group of people, therefore starts killing the other group? Well, and this is what is happening here.
Politics taken to the extreme ends up there.
Yes, and all the Herods kind of have this Jewish side, and Herod Agrippa the first, his grandma was Hasmonean, so she was liked by the Jews because of his ascendance. So he's trying to please the Jews, and that's where we get James here. And
they were actually not Jews, they were half-breeds.
Yeah,
Idumean
exactly.
and
yes,
Jewish.
Exactly.
Which they deeply resented, that they were not pure.
Yeah, exactly. So we have in verse 2, as you read, James
is
the
gone.
first disciple.
And so this is James,
die.
John, Peter, Andrew, James, and John. So this is one of the inner circle now.
Yes, the three that were always with Jesus.
One of the inner circle is gone.
Yeah.
And seeing that this was pleasing to the Judeans, he doesn't call them Jews here in the Greek, he calls them the Judeans. Herod, made the additional move of arresting Peter, these were the days of the unleavened bread, whom he seized and placed in prison, handing him over to be guarded by 4 quaternia. Okay, so that's a technical term of this squad of soldiers, intending to bring him up before the people after the Passover. We'll let the big holy day go by, the big celebration, then I'll bring him out. Go pull that short sword out, and then there goes Peter.
I think it's important to understand that he held him until then, not because he wanted to have compassion on him or talk to him. He was still thinking of killing him. I think we have to be able to read this. I mean, being that it pleased them that he killed James, now he's going to kill Peter. So he doesn't want to do it in the holy days.
He could, because there could be a popular reaction as well.
Oh, absolutely. Imagine the Jews, especially with Passover. So he takes that precaution to continue with it, the Jews to be okay. And so here we have, he's chained, and I think we have to read this.
Don't miss verse 5. So Peter was held in the prison, but prayer was being offered up to God ardently on his behalf by the assembly. Okay?
Okay.
Now you're going to get there sometime.
All right.
But I was sharing with you just before we started rolling the cameras here that it's amazing to me that this is the first time we see prayers ascending for deliverance. Because James is executed, not a word about the church, not a word about a prayer service, nothing. And yet now when Peter's in, oh boy, everybody's down on all fours before God. You know what I mean? Down on all fours, yeah. And it just makes you wonder if they might have thought that, the ones who are closest to Christ, the 12, nothing's going to happen to them. They're impervious. The devil can't get them. And what happens? Stephen goes, well, yeah, but he's not one of the 12. As soon as James goes, good night, it can happen to all of us,
yes,
and including our leaders.
Oh, and you think that's when they started praying?
Well, it is in Acts. This is the first time they pray in Acts for deliverance. This is the first time.
Because one of the groups, one of the questions I have regarding the group is, you don't think they prayed for Peter and just the answer was different? I mean, for James?
Yeah. Well, it could be. I mean, you can make that point. But for some reason, this is highlighted and not a peep about James. And he's the inner circle.
I want to make sure that our audience doesn't get the idea that every time you pray, turns out exactly as you asked.
Yeah, that's a very key point.
Yeah, because I think that the point is, and I borrowed this praying hands, I think we should always pray and submit our requests to God.
Yeah.
I know people that have become really frustrated and left the church because I can remember a pastor who told me the story of this man whose wife was sick, and he was sure that God was going to heal her, and the whole group prayed, and the whole church prayed, and she died. And so he came to the pastor's office and threw the Bible on top of his desk and said, you can have this and your God and everything because this doesn't work.
Really? That's sad.
So I understand that they are praying for Peter and that there will be a surprising answer to their prayer. And I also want to know what you think about the fact that we must submit our requests to God because he doesn't always do what we ask.
And if we take our Jesus 101 template, how did Jesus live? How did Jesus pray? Did Jesus ever have prayers not answered as he wished they had been answered?
Yeah, absolutely.
And we know the answer, Gethsemane. He said, that's not what I want. I don't want this. But if this is what you want, I'll go through with it. I'll go through with it.
That doesn't diminish at all the necessity for intercessory prayer, for prayers for deliverance, for the group to come together and pray. We have seen many miracles in our churches when the group comes together and pray. And so,
in fact, Elizabeth, I just wish we prayed more. I don't think we pray as much as we could. I think we're too sophisticated in the West. We're just, well, you know, we'll get through this. I mean, this is not a big deal. The economy's going down, well, civic affairs turn a certain direction. Well, you know, we just don't go to our knees. We don't go down on all four. And don't you suppose that it might please the Heavenly Father if we were earnest and pleading with Him? You know, when your little child, your little girl or your little boy, when Christy or Kirky would come to me and, Daddy, I just have to have this, Daddy, it gets to my heart. Right? It's not like, well, you know, Daddy does best,
so
or just
God
trust
also...
me. Yeah, don't call me, I'll call you.
No.
The Father thrives. It's a joy to experience the petition, because every time you ask, it's a book called Christ's Object Lessons. The more we ask, the closer we grow. The more we ask, the closer we grow. God says, keep asking me, because we get close.
He wants to hear from you. Absolutely. I have this little beautiful prayer box that my aunt gave me.
That is pretty.
And it's like a little puzzle. You have little parts that you take out, and so that nobody can actually look at your prayer request. And when I use prayer boxes, and I do, this is like the box for God to do as He pleases. So I put my request there. This is what I would like. But you do as you know best, because God knows things that I don't know, right?
I trust
but
you.
this burden to say, okay, if I'm going to trust God because I have seen His heart at the cross, I know how He feels about me, I know I'm valuable to Him, so that means that I can put in my box and say, I'm giving you this problem because I can't handle it. And okay, I gave it to God, right? So I think this is an important topic, and in this case, they will get this incredible answer to their prayer, so much so that nobody will believe it that it's true. And so we get an angel coming in on verse 7.
You know, and the fact that some angels show up and others don't, the point, you know, let's not forget, we all have an angel.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
We always have this protection.
The angel always shows up. But
we just don't see the angel show. The angel never leaves us, actually. He's always right beside us.
So, actually, on verse 6, it makes a point how difficult, actually how humanly impossible. Verse 6, on the very night when Herod was about to bring him forward. So this is the last night of
before
Peter
execution.
On earth. Peter was sleeping, which is already a juxtaposition that blows your mind. You're dying the next day.
I would be wide awake. How much time is left?
So Peter was sleeping between two soldiers, bound with two chains, on guards in front of the door were watching over the prison. So he has at least 4 soldiers, right? 2 with the chains and 2 in front. So humanly impossible. I think that's what is making the point. Okay, so continue. What happens?
Now, verse 7, and look, behold, an angel of the Lord descended upon it, and a light shone within the building, the entire prison house. I love this moment. Striking Peter's side. Maybe he tried to whisper him away. Hey, Peter. Peter.
He didn't wake up.
Peter's a big fisherman. He just... Pete.
Because
you gotta wake up.
He says that he struck him.
Oh, whoa.
I like the basic commands. He struck Peter's side, woke him up, and said, get up quickly.
Rise up quickly.
And Peter is all like dazed, right? So he keeps giving commands. Gird yourself.
Chains all fall off.
Put on your sandals. Wrap your cloak. I love it because he's completely, you know. And then?
And he did so, and he says to him, okay, throw your cloak about yourself, your robe, and follow me. And going out, verse 9, Peter follows the angel, and he did not realize that what was going on with the angel was real.
He thinks it's a vision.
I'm just dreaming this.
And it would be a nice dream to have the night before your execution.
Sure.
Maybe God will, deliver me.
But he thought he was seeing a vision. And passing through the first prison enclosure, and then the second, they come upon the gate of iron, leading out into the city, which opened for them by itself, and they went out and along one street, and shoo, it's gone.
I love this part because when we are in trouble and there's no human way out, God has unlimited resources that we don't know anything about. So that's why I love the fact that He gives you all this, how impossible it was. The chains here and this there and how many gates, and the final gate opens by itself and all this kind of stuff. I mean, this is the God we served. he did that we serve, he did this at the cross by making a way out for salvation, which none of us could do it. But he also does it for everyday stuff, you know? And the angel didn't even have to touch the gate. It opened by itself because God has unlimited resources. He knows what he's doing and we don't. And so we can ask God and he decides. And so that's when Peter realized when he was outside.
The cool night air is blowing on his face and say, oh, this is real.
This is
I'm
real.
out.
Yeah, read it, verse 11.
Verse 11, and having come to himself, Peter said, now I know that the Lord truly did send out his angel and did rescue me from Herod's hand and from everything the Judean people anticipated doing. And having realized this, down a few alleys, up a few stairs, he comes to the household of Mary, the mother of John. This would be the upper room. This is the owner of the upper room that Jesus used.
You think
it's
it's
the same upper room? It became the meeting place. Acts 1.
So this is the mother of John Mark who wrote the Gospel of Mark.
Where many people were gathered together. They're having this massive prayer meeting. And then you tell the story about it when he gets to the door.
Well, before we tell the story, let's talk a little bit about prayer. What is prayer? So we're going to show you a little video with some thoughts, and then we'll come back.
Prayer is the act of communicating with God at any time and in any place. We converse with God as his children. Jesus taught us to pray, Our Father who is in heaven. As a loving parent, he's eager to respond to us with love and grace. God is all-knowing, all-powerful, and all-loving. We can have a conversation with God about any and all things. Our cares, difficulties, fear, pain, joy, thanksgiving, our loved ones, and much more. The Bible encourages us to pray in the Spirit on all occasions with all kinds of prayers and requests. Prayer is the opening of the heart to God as to a friend. Not that it is necessary in order to make known to God what we are, but in order to enable us to receive Him. Prayer does not bring God down to us, but brings us up to Him. Conversing with our loving God deepens and strengthens our trust in Him, and we become increasingly open to His love and guidance in our lives. God hears our prayers and grants us His peace. Be anxious for nothing, but in everything by prayer and supplication, with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God. And the peace of God, which surpasses all comprehension, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. Through the sacrifice of Jesus on our behalf, God has granted us immediate and unlimited access to His throne. Therefore, since we have confidence to enter the holy place by the blood of Jesus, let us draw near with a sincere heart in full assurance of faith.
So we have some thoughts on prayer, and you already shared how important you think prayer is, especially community prayer regards to
collective
deliverance.
Praying, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So we are going to see now that their answer.
Yeah, because this story is such an affirmation of that.
Yes.
As you pointed out a moment ago, every prayer doesn't get answered the way the whole group wants.
Yes.
But when the whole group comes together, something happens to the group, and sometimes that. Do you have time for just a quick, John Polkinghorne, the great Anglican physicist, came to our campus.
All right.
He was a clergyman, and he's also an astrophysicist, all right? So the guy is just brilliant.
Wow.
He's Sir John Polkinghorne. I was in a question and answer period with him, and somebody asked, do you think it counts if more people pray than with just one person praying? And this brilliant mind stopped for a moment, Elizabeth, and he said, I think it works like a laser. A laser is a banding together of multiple light beams. The more beams you have, the more powerful that laser is. And he says, I think group prayer operates the same way. And to me, that was just one of those like, ding.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So does it matter that more people are praying? It matters. And here they are.
Yeah. And so they get this.
Yeah.
So Peter goes directly, Peter will go into hiding after this, but first he wants to tell his people that he's okay. So he knocks at the door of Mary's house, John Mark's mother, and verse 13, when he knocked at the door of the gate, a servant girl named Rhoda came to answer, and when she recognized Peter's voice, because of her joy, she did not open the door at the gate. I can imagine her saying, "What? Peter is out? Wow, let me tell the others." And Peter's still outside the gate.
Ding dong,
Hey,
ding
yeah,
dong,
don't forget.
ding dong.
And the fact that they don't believe her, I think this is great.
Yeah.
Because it's such a great surprise that they can't. So he continued knocking, verse 16. And when they had opened the door, they saw him and were amazed. But before that, in verse 15, they said to her, "You are out of your mind."
And mine says, "You are raving."
I like that.
Loco.
Yeah, loco. Yeah, but isn't it interesting that they're praying for that, and they get what they were asking for, and they can't believe that it's true?
It can't be true.
It can be true, even though we're asking for that. But yeah, it's very.
Where's your faith?
Yeah, well, sometimes we ask for big things and God does it, and we're like, no, that's not possible. Yeah, so then after that, Peter actually goes in hiding. We don't know where. He will appear again in Acts 15 for the last time in the book of Acts. Obviously, he continued preaching the gospel, but after that, Paul will kind of take over the whole book.
Chapter 13.
And he says there, then he left and went to another place. And but the ending of the story is that when Herod Agrippa I discovers that Peter is gone, they execute the soldiers.
That's sad. You know.
Yeah, because at that time, the punishment, if they lost their prisoner, was their own lives, right? Whatever the prisoner was going to get, they get, right? So it's kind of sad that this happened to them. And then Herod Agrippa dies. This point that we can surrender our prayers to God. I have a little figurine here. I'm sure the camera's going to have a hard time capturing it, but it's that very known thing about Gethsemane and Jesus praying, saying, "If there's any other way, please make this cup pass from me." And there wasn't any other way. So God didn't answer that affirmatively, but Jesus submitted to the will of God, that let go and let God type of prayer.
We could never say to Jesus, "But you didn't know what it was like to have your prayers turned down." And Jesus, whoa, what do you mean I didn't know? Yeah, I've been there and done that.
Yes,
Yeah.
and sometimes, obviously, we get different answers, and we don't always know what God sees and why it's necessary. But I think we can make the request. We should get together to make the request. Believe that God can deliver, and then submit our will to God.
Amen.
Thank you for being here with us. I'm going to head to the cross with one of my favorite prayers. I have told you before that I collect precious moments, and thank you to all of you that have sent precious moments to me. This is one of my favorite prayers, and I pray it often, at least once a week, and it's the serenity prayer, the one that says, okay, I am going to give my will to God, and He will give me wisdom. It says, God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, and the courage to change the things I can, as the wisdom to know the difference. There's some things I can change. Most of these things I cannot change. God, give me the wisdom to know the difference and still believe that there's one that is really in power, and is the one who at one point said, is it possible for this cup to pass? And it wasn't, because you were worth it.